Do we want to go with the folks on the line first?
Maha?
I was pointing at you, but you probably didn't see me. I'm Maha. I am a professor of practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo in Egypt. And I'm also co-facilitator of Equity Unbound. Go ahead, Anna.
I'm Anna Mills. I teach writing at College of Marin in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've written an OER textbook on writing. And
I'm Lance Eaton, Director of Faculty Development and Innovation at College Unbound, and just all around kind of nerd in the open ed space. Nerd and groupie, I guess. So we are going to do a Mentimeter, I believe.
We are. I'm just reminding us of the title.
That's right. That is our
Openness is attitude, vulnerability is practice, and finding our way with generative AI. And it's based on some of the work we've done together, but we keep talking, so we have more things to say. And we won't listen to you. So the Mentimeter, I'm going to open that up and put the link in the chat. And also, if you want to use your QR code to respond, that should also work. Like it was planning to work.
Oop.
We'll figure this out.
We'll decide.
Yeah, we were just talking about, are we ever going to reach the point of doing virtual events and hybrid events where we're not worried that the technology is going to fail us? And it's starting to do that already.
So Maha, can you project a little bit more? Because I think in the room we can't hear you that well.
Oh, okay. Is this better?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. I was just talking through the technical difficulties and yeah, now we don't have them anymore. All right. So here's the QR code. I'm also going to, I think I can copy this link. Yeah. And put it in the chat. So those who are joining virtually can join us that way. And if you're in the room, either go to menti.com and put in the code 59594597 or use the QR code. And I'm going to put the QR code up again even when we ask the next question. It's totally okay. Right. I'm seeing quite a few people. Lines, how many people do you have?
In the room, we have probably about 20 to 25.
We have more online
know.
wins. We're 42. 41 now. Okay.
Ooh.
Well, and Anna and I are among them. So 39 really. Okay. I'll go to the next slide where we ask our first question. You can still see the QR code if you hadn't captured it already. And we want to know how you've been helping yourself learn more about AI. And you can choose more than one, obviously. I hope we haven't missed anything, but if we did, and you're virtual, you can tell us in the chat.
This is the racehorse part of the game.
I don't know if I can actually, I can't move the QR code, so I'll keep it up a little bit until we have about maybe 40 responses or something.
Those on your computers, the code is 59594597. See a lot of self-directed.
Also, clearly, a lot of people doing a lot of different things, right? Because there's so many in the 30s, so clearly a lot of people are doing more than one. We actually had that one twice, by the way, in the poll because we were naming it different things. Okay, let's take a look at this. Yeah, so colleagues in self-directed experimentation are the highest, right? And conferences as well. So those are in the 30s. And then 25 free webinars and workshops, 25 online resources and publications. Not a bad number. These numbers are going up a little bit as well. And institutional programming and opportunities is also not horrible. It's like 23. Then social media, 13. Students, 13. Yeah, if you listen to your students, you learn a lot about AI, I think. You just create that environment where they'll talk to you. You're going to say something about that, Lance?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing that learning with our students is some of the best ways to figure this out.
Yeah. Oh, and Liz Long is virtual, and she's saying MyFest should be on there. Thank you. I guess that would be, yeah, paid courses or free courses. Yeah. Um, and only 3 people MOOCs, which is interesting in an open ed conference, right? And 2 for paid courses. So like all of the structured kind of learning, 6 OA books, 3 books that aren't OA, and 10 blogs. 13 social media, 8 listservs. So that's interesting. Maybe we'll talk about the particular listservs that we're interested in. Thank you all for responding to that question. And then there's other stuff people saying. Learning from K to 12 students, they're ahead of us. Yeah, I'm learning from my own child. I forgot to add that. My daughter is one of the first people who taught me about, not, she didn't teach me about AI, she was experimenting with me, and I learned a lot from working with her. Amanda in the chat saying colleagues in teaching and learning have taken on AI as part of their role, so I've been learning primarily from them as they do deep dives. Thank you. Yeah, and Mia's talking about listening students and kids. Excellent about teaching. About how to detect hallucinations. Oh, I want to hear about that later, Mia. Okay. Next one. We wanted to know if you have enough supportive space to explore your honest ambivalence, confused, vulnerable response to AI. We're just assuming here that everybody has these kinds of responses, but you know what we mean, like when you don't know and when you're confused, do you have that space?
Nice to see thus far. Nobody's selecting no supportive space.
Yeah,
That's
that's good to
that's
hear.
heartening. I say this and then all of a sudden it's gonna shoot out.
Better than 5 is good. I actually didn't expect that.
Yeah. It's quite, actually, it's interesting. It's exactly on par, but though we don't know if it's the same people who are saying that. You know what I mean? Like maybe somebody's got a 6 and an 8, but the average is out.
Yeah, we had wondered if it would be more comfortable outside the institution because but it seems like it's closer than expected.
Mm.
I guess the next interesting question is where within the institution?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
That's very, very
In
good
what
point.
company?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Where in
Anita
our
is giving,
structure are we comfortable?
yeah, that's a good point. And Anita is actually saying something, a nuance. This is where the virtual folks are privileged because they can say more. Saying there's not a lot of time to explore AI efficiently. So it's not just about having a supportive space that's safe, but like a space that allows you the time to actually do this enough. That's a great point. All right. Last one. This is a more open-ended question. Like, where
Maha,
do you
you're
feel
still
comfortable?
fading a bit, so it's a little harder
Oh,
to.
sorry. I
Yep.
just, if when I hold the mic, it sounds better. Is this better?
Yes, perfect. Sorry.
All right. And this one's where do you feel comfortable sharing your incomplete and partially finished thoughts on AI? So like classroom, a particular social media space, and like particular ones would help. Or in your department, like this is where when you say my department or like in more public spaces like in your institution. So far with colleagues, people are saying, and you can put more than one, obviously. Close colleagues, right? So not any, okay. And Lens and Anna, feel free to point out ones that resonate with
Really striking, putting colleagues at the center. It's still in this one-to-one interpersonal relationship that we feel that we can be.
I see a new spelling of work friends that I am totally stealing. I don't know who put that in there, but that is now my new thing. Thank you.
I'm seeing also just friends. I'm seeing students. I was seeing things like Zoom chat and things like Blue Sky as a social media space, LinkedIn, private notebook with your director. That's good. I'm seeing the Facebook higher ed group, Anna.
Yes, I put that in the chat, the link to it, because that's one of the spaces that I've felt this.
Yeah. Someone wrote about the open ed groups. Okay, conferences, co-teachers. in conversation with AI itself.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Very meta.
Yeah. Someone said like-minded colleagues. And I think that like-minded is an important aspect. Sometimes
Mm,
you're looking for someone you don't have to explain yourself to every 5 minutes, right?
mm.
Your friends my age are not comfortable.
Oh, techie friends at church. I'm happy you found your people.
Mm.
Somebody said their spouse.
Yeah. Co-teacher, private notebook. I like that.
Yeah. Someone said blog.
Other
Meetings. Okay.
millennials. Nice.
Oh, I didn't know what other mill was. I was like, is that the other Anna Mills or something? I didn't get the other millennials. How did you understand that one? Oh, there's another that says other mill, and there's one that says other millennials. So they're actually two different ones. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you all for sharing. And someone said anywhere, which I think is cool. And yeah. All right. Let's move on from here. This
Mm.
is this the, I think this is the last one, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So what kind of sport do you need to engage in in a more open approach or have more agency in relation to AI? I promise we have stuff to say. We just wanted to hear from you first, and we'll want to hear from you guys again after this as well. Like as we share our stories, we'd love to hear yours.
Hmm.
Yeah, so time and
Time and
financial
financial
support.
support. Mm. Right? Time and money.
Surprise. But also the open-mindedness is interesting.
Mm.
Huh.
Oh, and someone saying space to discuss and talk through the ethical challenges. Yes, thank
Yep.
you. That's even in conferences that are supposed to be about the ethics of AI, honestly.
Clear guidelines. Yeah. I feel like there's so much coming at us.
Mm,
Just needing, because there's so many other things we're trying to account for, just can I just get the clear lines to work within? I know for a lot of folks can be reassuring and just grounding with everything else going on.
yeah. Someone's also saying less initial resistance when you bring it up. And then someone about freedom to experiment and admit the experimentation. That's a great point to also like to report back on actually, but this is actually what happened. Yeah.
I was curious about that because is that admit because it's embarrassing to say I used AI because other people might be more critical of AI, or is it that it's embarrassing because I'm doing something that might seem very novice? Or, I
That
mean,
was
there's a lot
neither.
of reasons why I've hesitated to tell.
I like to admit that I do things because in the open admittance, I also feel like I'm like breaking ground in terms of um, the culture around it, like sort of pushing boundaries regarding the taboos or the feeling of resistance around it. So to be able to admit publicly and openly that I'm playing with it with my students in a like experimentation publicly, that I think is a radical act and a good one.
Gosh, it's like you're setting us up for the rest of our presentation.
Yeah.
You'll get our
We
kickback
wanted
shortly. Awesome.
faculty learning community is one that's coming up, and
Oh,
I think people who
still need
can.
to hear you. Not,
Oh, is this any better? No?
yes.
Yeah. Someone mentioned a faculty learning community. I don't know if it would be a fun faculty learning experimentation community rather than just talking about it. Might be also interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah, what Lance was saying is what you were saying, Mia, is something we're gonna talk about very soon. All right, I think I can switch to. Thank you all for sharing. Sorry we didn't read them all out. We can come back to it later, and if people want, we can send the Mentimeter stuff to you later. Lance, over to you.
All right. So welcome. Thank you for participating in that. Part of what as we came into thinking about this session and some of the work that we've been doing, we've been grappling with some interesting big questions in open ed as a whole, and also specifically within AI. And so we wanted to share this whole practice around openness as attitude and this exploration into vulnerability is a lot of our collective work over the last, it's going to be 2 years and in a month, I guess, is
Wow.
trying to figure out like where does this fit within all of our work. And so one of the ideas that we came up with, and Maha, I'm going to hand it to you to talk about this idea of not yetness and the ways that we've been working through it.
Yeah. So Jen Roth and Amy Collier have
Oh,
been
got to move
working
the
on
mic
this.
again.
Okay. Jen Roth and Amy Collier have been working on this for quite some time, and they were calling it not yetness. And I love this term because it's so expressive, right? And what they mean by it is when you can't satisfy every condition, you don't fully understand something, you can't checklist everything, you can't have it all tidy, you can't really solve every problem, but just create that space for emergence so that we can go to new and unpredictable places, help us better understand the problem we're trying to solve. And I kind of feel like with AI, sometimes what we're looking for is certainty and boxing it in, and that's not actually possible right now. But that we can embrace that space as a space of emergence. Um, and as we say this, and as Anna Lance and I were writing our paper, and as we were preparing for this, we recognize that not everybody is in the same kind of level of safety everywhere they are. Even the issues of time and experimentation, some of us have the privilege to be able to do, oh, I'm doing research on this, so I have time to play and share. Others, there's a lot more control in the institutions they work in. I think people in K to 12 may not be allowed to do certain things. Um, so we're just recognizing that there's a lot of privilege and a lot of in our ability to be vulnerable, um, and not get into trouble for that or not be harmed by it.
So this first question that we're exploring, and we're going to open up for conversation from people in Zoom and people in the room, is: are there places that you are willing to share your not yetness professionally or personally? And so I'll step into sharing a bit about myself and kind of how I've found my way within this. A lot for me, a lot of the things that I've been thinking about, or the path that I've traveled to get more comfortable with, like how to figure something out in the open. Um, I think first is just that is like in some ways the centerpiece of teaching and learning that I've explored over the years, but really it goes back to my days as an adjunct. My coming into the career, coming into this work started as doing the full-time adjunct. Not really being a first gen graduate student, and then being the first like in this space within my family, not having people to look to and figure out like what does it mean to teach, other than like look at all the examples that felt right for me, but not necessarily for other people. In doing that full-time adjunct at like, I don't know, at one point I was at 5 different schools teaching 9 face-to-face classes, 2 online. There was a lot not yetness going on, and I see some eyes rolling here and bulging. But it was like I didn't know what I didn't know, and I had to like figure that out in the process. I think being in that space, being in that, like having no good clear leadership, is also what led me into doing faculty support, instructional design. And that was also a place that I found a willingness in a community that responds to that. And so over the last 13 or so years, the places I practice this a lot are on my personal blog, which uh, is a place where I just try to figure things out and do so in a way that shares for other people to, uh, I don't want to say learn, because I don't know that there's much there to learn, as it is of like see somebody else that's struggling, see somebody else that's trying to figure things out. And that led for me to do also eventually a Substack around AI, and also to be in conversation with Maha and Anna about like how do we figure this out. In the way this manifested, I think most powerfully, is being at an institution that, at College Unbound, really centering students in their voice. And so back in December 2022, as generative AI was coming out, uh, realizing this was going to be a challenge to figure out, having a colleague, Autumn Keynes, who also thinks a lot about students and agency, and discovering students might be using it in her class, and us pausing to be okay with we're not sure what to figure out yet. And from there, actually crafting and running a course on AI in education in January 2023. at my school, generative AI or ChatGPT is 6 weeks old, and learning with my students, being like, okay, we don't have an answer to this, but let's figure out an answer together. And so with students, playing with it, learning about it, and ultimately crafting institutional policy, that usage policy for faculty and students was our way of like moving and sitting in not yetness and trying to just accept that, this was going to be messy. This was going to be a challenge. It was going to be hard for the students, hard for myself, and ultimately for the faculty who also had to look at and figure it out. But knowing it was also the right way for an institution, really centering student voices to have them in this space guiding that policy. So that is a bit for me kind of engaging with and thinking about, places personally and professionally. I've grappled with not yetness, but I'd love to hear from folks. We can lift it up in the chat or bring a microphone over to folks in the room that want to share their experiences.
Virtual folks, feel free to, I think, raise your hand, probably in this case, is the easiest way. Thanks, Anna, for putting the question again. The chat is very fun, by the way, Lance, you're missing out. Someone just mentioned artisanal intelligence. I actually don't know how to say that word. Is it artisanal? Is that how you say it?
Artisanal, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've
Are there
been called a
places
hero,
that you,
Lance, by the way.
I just got to read for the room just from the chat. Are there places you are willing to share your not yetness professionally or personally?
Glenda, hi Glenda from South Africa. She's saying it's all about the students. They must be our partners. We don't know anymore. I love that. One of
We've got
my former
somebody.
students is here and he's taught me a lot. Go ahead, Lance.
Yep, go for it.
Hi, my name is Eleni. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on. We can hear you.
Okay. I think okay, yeah. A time for me was I'm an academic librarian now, but I used to be an educator. And when COVID hit, we all went digital. We all like overnight almost. And this is a perfect example of when the building the plane as we're flying sort of situation. And I really took that opportunity to ask my students. I mean, I always would ask my students, but especially when I'm redeveloping something that we're all going to be interacting with every week, I think that was a really great opportunity for me to bring them in and to ask them to collaborate, because it was all digital sharing platforms. So we had to be creative, and I came with my ideas, but hearing from them and seeing what worked best for them, especially in their really unique situations where a lot of students, this was high school, so a lot of students lived in tiny little apartments with siblings and parents all home. So we really had to pivot. It wasn't as easy as like, oh, let's just all hop on Zoom and we'll pretend that this is in person, like it had to get sincerely creative. And they helped with that. And it was a very interactive time in their educational experience, because I'm from New York City. Not every student had tablets or laptops. So then the Department of Education gave everyone, I mean, it took forever for some of them, like really the inequity was very glaring. But at some point we all did have devices, and I feel like it propelled us into a digital age that we hadn't really seen in the Department of Ed before. Of course, there were challenges, but accepting that, like, I don't know what's going on in the world and everything, like we were all so unsure of what was happening, and inviting them in, I think, helped create and foster a positive learning experience.
Thank you so much.
And Ash also wrote something in the chat about her blogging about not yetness of social justice, equity, and OER on her website. It's called empoweredoer.com, and this is an August post. Thank you for sharing that, Ash. And I think because social justice work is always not yet, like we're never done with it, and that's a great point. And I'm glad that you're sharing it publicly, like your not yet thoughts, like something related to what Mia was saying earlier is like this narrating our process and not just the outcome is huge.
Tiffany also says in the chat that it helps her identify with her students. Not yetness helps me identify with my students and vice versa. And I thought that was really powerful. I felt that as well.
And do you have someone else in the room, or shall I read another comment?
I think we can do another thing from the chat. We're still waiting for additional hands in the room. No pressure. All the
Okay.
pressure.
So Glenda Cox was talking about transformation as a journey, and that we need to feel safe with colleagues in order to move forward. Yeah. Okay, we
Oh,
can move on.
I
Yeah,
think we've
got
got
someone?
one last
Yeah.
one in the room, and then we'll move on.
Maybe we'll see how this goes. So I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Mm.
I'm sure some can relate, and I think that kind of relates here to this idea of not yetness. That if I were still trying to be a perfectionist, I would not have published a OER book yet
Mm.
at all. I actually gave the reins over to somebody else, and I paid somebody to do the transition for me. And then I just got to like look at it and say whether or not I thought it was pretty and what I wanted to change.
It's awesome.
So there's
I
hope
love
out
that.
there for all of you other perfectionists that need to recover.
Cool.
Yeah, it
Thank
took
you
me
so
7 years to finish my PhD. I think that says a lot. I can imagine publishing a book.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Anna, did you want to say this out loud, what you just wrote, or?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel the same way about discovering the whole OER paradigm made me feel like I could write a textbook, and that, what was important was that I had something to say, not that it was perfectly shaped or finished. Because I love just knowing that I just have to put it out there and I can keep revising it. Other people can take it and revise it. And that was so freeing.
I love that perspective. Actually, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I love what you just said there, Anna. All right, so the next big question we have was, what have you been able to iterate on or move forward on because others were willing to share their not yetness? And I will say for me, especially with AI, is thinking through how would students let us know that they've used AI? How would we let someone know we've used AI when we're publishing? And I remember early on, sort of like, oh, do I co-author it with AI? Do I do whatever? And what I was blogging about it and tweeting about it, but also other people were also thinking aloud with me. And no one was like, oh, that's a stupid question. And people were just sharing what other people were thinking about it. And then when I would write something that someone was thinking is possibly a good idea, I would see people like Anna or Mark Marino posting about it in another space, letting me know that this is helping them think through theirs. I watch Anna, who's someone who I consider to be like pretty much an expert on what's going on right now in the past 2 years, someone that I learn from all the time, ask very humble questions on Twitter. And I will say this, I notice, and she's very tolerant of this, and I've learned a lot from her, but she tolerates all the mansplaining that she gets. And every now and then I just have to go back. Do you guys know who you're talking to? She knows what she's talking about. She's just asking a question in a very humble way. And yeah, there isn't a Menti question right now. We're just asking you out loud. So if you want to share, you can share in the chat or yeah. So anyway, so I've learned a lot, especially from Anna who does this. I've learned a lot also from what Lance was doing, um, which was open a space for people to crowdsource what they're doing with their classes. I remember that very early Google Doc you shared, like
Mm.
what kind of policy or guidelines are you going to give your students in your classes? And he's not here to say, oh, here's how you can do it. Here's like, let's see what everybody else is doing if you're willing to share. And nobody knew what we were doing, and that's fine. And the thing with these open spaces for someone like me who's an educational developer, and a lot of people in my institution listen to me, is that I need to try what's going on outside and to experiment before I come back into my institution, because I don't want people to say, oh, well, Maha said this in August. And so that's what the institution wants us to do, which is almost never the case, but people sometimes take it that way. So yeah, I'd love to hear from the rest of you. Like, how has somebody else's not yetness and their willingness to share their vulnerability or openness helped you iterate or move forward? And if you're, in case this is not obvious, like we're kind of calling this a kind of openness, right? It's not about, it could be happening in open spaces, could be happening in small spaces, but it's just an openness of making what's in your thoughts open. Mia, were you
Yeah, I
unmuting
was
to?
gonna jump in. So I was just putting comments in the chat about the whole old paradigm of writing as product versus writing as process sort of comes to the fore when we add open and networked writing and network spaces for sharing our experiences as educators. And I've been doing a lot of what you guys are sort of talking about the not yetness. I taught a seminar course in I direct a writing studies program, and so there was a seminar I did recently called The Human Nature of Writing, and it was basically a co-learning journey with my grad students, exploring natural language processing and more deeply ChatGPT, right when it kind of became public. And my students syndicate their blogs into the course website. I blog each week as well. And the entire course became kind of like a public testament to the journey through that experience. The thing that I'm thinking about now, due to the very important comment about, safety issues and, what risks we're willing to take in the open. I'll say this, that at the same time that ChatGPT went public, I also pulled out of Twitter and sort of just left social media spaces, except, DMing and things like this for the most part, simply because I was appalled with what was unfolding at that time and still am. So the reach of my work was maybe less impactful, but the experiment of it is still there and is a record of, a record of public scholarship. So I think that's an interesting thing, is sort of to leave things in public, but then also the question of like amplification and the power of that. And I didn't bother myself too much with that. It wasn't really something I was motivated so much by, but I'm thinking about it now due to your conversation and the idea specifically about risk. I didn't feel much risk, to be honest with you, because I'm tenured, etc. But I kind of wish it had more reach in a way, because the students in their syndicated weekly understandings and commentary were so brilliant.
Someone in the room, Len?
Anyone in the room wanna? Oh, yep, we've got one. I gotta make the lap around the room to get to the person. There we go.
Hi. So I think what helped me with others sharing, I was somehow identified on my campus as a bit of an AI expert, and it freaked me out because I don't really think I am at all. And I got put on a committee where we're starting to figure out some of the stuff you were talking about, institutional policies and things like that. And I realized that I'm doing some very specific kind of reading into AI for it's what my dissertation is going to be on for an EDD. But it's very specific to my topic. And I was very worried that specific knowledge was not going to be helpful. And I also realized I'm not using these tools because I have a bit of a personal aversion to it, even though I'm like doing all this research and talking about how we need to get students thinking about it. And I got into this committee and a whole bunch of other people on there were like, yeah, me too. I'm not using the tools as much as I should. And it was like, okay, that was for me, somebody else sharing where it like gave me permission to, these are the things that I can do with what I have, and everybody's okay
Can I
with
ask you a
that.
question? I'm curious about the as much as I should part. Like, who who said that there's a level that we should be using it at? Like, I'm realizing it's like an internalized thing that nobody ever says out loud, but you feel shamed if you're not doing. And this AI shaming thing needs to go away. Like whether people feel ashamed for using it or for not using it. Like,
So where I was at was not almost not using it at all. I had seen a thing on LinkedIn about right as ChatGPT came out about the hallucinations, and somebody who had been a mentor at a previous institution posted something about put in your name in ChatGPT and see what it tells you about yourself. And that was basically my experimentation. And when it told me that I didn't exist, I decided I was done with ChatGPT.
Yeah. Uh, I appreciate that piece, and I feel like we've had this conversation of the degree to which we use it, that like the I'm not gonna obviously speak for Anna Maha, but I get the like people look to us as quote unquote the experts, and my level of view, I think it's the level of use does not necessarily equate to the amount. The level of understanding does not necessarily equate to the amount of use. And I think for myself, like I keep thinking about a series that I would be writing of like, I might feel I'm hopefully defending my dissertation in early December. It's not about AI, but it's somehow will connect to it ultimately because things connect. I am also thinking about a series of posts of like, do I think, or how do I think how I might have used AI differently if might have used AI in this process if it was now versus 9 years ago when I started. Because I hear that piece of like, there's a tension about where I want to insert it and where I feel like it makes sense. And I think that's good for like that's some of the not yetness, that's some of the like discomfort or comfort where we're trying to navigate. Others? Anything else we want to highlight in the chat or move to the next question?
I think let's do.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Someone defended their dissertation last week, so congratulations. I think. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And
All right. I'm just waiting. Oh, okay. So my question is, how has witnessing vulnerability in these spaces made you more hopeful or otherwise helped how you felt about engaging with or responding to AI? Um, I'm so grateful. And there's just a part of me that breathes a sigh of relief whenever I hear people being vulnerable. There was a moment in a conference where I was on a task force and we were presenting, and somebody was like, well, this is all sort of seeming to be for people who have these big initiatives already started at their institutions. And what about when you're starting from below zero? And there was such a response in the room, and so many people sort of going, oh, yes, thank you. We have not started. And I felt relieved too. And there's also a part of that it's a humorous moment. It's like, oh, somebody dared to say the quiet thing, you know? Maybe we can all say those things. And I also feel energized when that happens. I feel like, oh, now the conversation's really going to get started. There's a tension, right? There's some reason they didn't want to share it, but then they did. And so we can talk about that tension. We can recognize it. We can tap into the emotion that's involved. And I also feel like when it happens on social media or on listservs, I mean, I feel like it gives me permission to do it. I feel like Maha has done that in her posts on X going back a couple of years. I felt like, wow, somebody of that stature who people love and look to, and she's asking these authentic questions that are real questions about what do I do about this, or how does this work, or aren't we concerned about this, that are really open-ended questions. So that kind of gave me permission to feel like I could, maybe. So it's just that sense of relief and gratitude. And it's partly relief from like the FOMO and the imposter syndrome. Because, you know, even there are days when I get on LinkedIn or on any platform and it's just like, oh my gosh, all these people are doing these amazing things and posting so often and they know so much. And who am I? You know, so when there's that other post that's like, here's what happened and I do not know how to think about this. It's like, oh, okay, this is a human reaching out to other humans, rather than, you know, someone who's got it all figured out or who's promoting themselves professionally. So there is that relief from my own FOMO and imposter syndrome. But I'll pause there. I'm seeing there are some comments in the chat. The modeling factor Mia is pointing to. Yes, right. Because when someone is vulnerable, it allows others to be vulnerable. And Ash is saying, I have felt this is particularly helpful when discussing the ethics of AI. Hearing people talk about this and saying they don't know, but here is what they think, has been really helpful in empowering others to join in on the fuzzy conversation. Yeah, that's really
Ash is willing to speak up, I think.
okay, great.
Do you wanna expand on that? Fine.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I said in the chat, but yeah, I think it's helpful because particularly with ethics, it's such a scary conversation to have, and people have really strong views on either side and all sides of it. And so when somebody who I guess is in a sort of authoritative role in the room, when they open it up by saying, look, I don't really know, I think that gives everyone else in the room permission to also not know and also just speak openly about it. And without that, the conversation can't really go anywhere useful. So I really appreciate in that particular situation around the ethics when people do that.
So not only the people who know are allowed to speak, right? Like we can discuss something even when we don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
precisely.
Angela says, I'm really honored to have our students come up to me to talk about their curiosity about AI, and now engage our faculty so that they can help their students explore this thing called AI. That really strikes me because my student who's here was just bringing up kind of the sense of fear that students have around asking questions in this loaded environment where they might be suspected of cheating with AI.
There's such a big gray area.
And so I love that the teacher is saying you feel honored by the student being willing to come to you with the question.
Lance, is someone in the room trying to come up and speak?
Nope, it was just something on somebody's phone accidentally went off. But I'll add to what Anna was saying. I had a similar moment in the course that I was teaching where a student came in and she was flustered and she was just like, I don't know what to do with this. She's like, I took AI, I took my notes and I put it into AI to organize them. Like, do I cite that? Do I not cite that? And just the desire to figure it out and the desire, like creating that, having that space, that classroom to test it out for them to like feel like be able to talk about it. Cause I think, I know in other contexts, they've heard or seen it being not talked about or not being able to like, what are the relevant use cases that they might be finding that have nothing to do with some of the more negative discourse using around AI was just like really powerful to see and learn from my students about their uses, but they're also like bringing that to the space to be like, I want to figure this out together. Was really cool.
Yeah, Angela wants to unmute. So go ahead. Yeah, thanks.
Hey guys. Yeah, when we first started all of this stuff about AI, there was no the students were ready to start working with it, but they didn't know what to do. The faculty were kind of standoffish and very scared of it. Now we're seeing that turn around in that the students are gangbusters. They want to learn this stuff because they know that when they get out there into the job market, it's going to help them. It may be one of those little points that gets checked off on the resume and / interview that, oh, this person has experience with AI. I've got 2 faculty members that jumped in full blown. They wanted to use AI, and classroom. They wanted to use it in their student activities and things. And I'm using them as examples of how we can incorporate AI into the learning for our students. And it's doing great things. And I'm hoping that that will then inspire other faculty to come in and start wanting to explore this thing called AI.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And we're loving your
Shawana?
background. I feel like we want to all enter the matrix or not or escape.
Yasser is saying students already use it, but I believe they don't know the limitations and biases stemming out of it. And so that's, I guess, the critical AI literacy piece. Um,
Other
there is
additional.
another, yeah, there's another comment in the chat from, I don't know if I'm saying the name correctly, Shawana?
Shauna.
Shauna, sorry. Do you want to say it out loud?
Sure, I'll just say that we had Dr. Sarah Eaton speaking about academic integrity and AI. And she said one of the ways she gets around resistance and negativity is to speak about the AI in its more specific terms, like use Notebook LM or Grammarly, and especially like Grammarly because we kind of like are really used to some of the AI, and so it's less threatening, and that allows us to have an open conversation.
And also no relation between Sarah and myself, although we have had conversations, but there's apparently two
You
Eatons
get
really
that a
exploring
lot.
AI.
That's reminding me of another thing that I've seen Lance do that is a different form of vulnerability, which is to bring in kind of a goofiness or a humor around AI that isn't just making fun of it, but like I think in his Substack he recently shared that he often starts presentations with the what is AI? Is it what is AI? Wrong answers only.
Yes. Yes.
So getting people saying things that are ridiculous, really opens up the discussion. And to me, that makes so much sense in relation to AI because it's very strange and it's very overwhelming. And it just, in some ways, it just doesn't make sense. And the whole situation doesn't make sense and add up. And so you've got to have some vulnerability to acknowledge that. Otherwise, you're kind of a robotic hype machine, I feel like. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I start with that. I've also played around with reminding folks that ChatGPT, when spoken phonetically in French, it translates to cat I farted. Right. And so like this way of just like it's silly, it's goofy, and also it gives that pause to be like, okay, it's not as existential crisis as all the other things, and let's actually like we can kind of move into thinking about it a little bit more. I think that has been, yeah, it's one of the things I try to move into space with, because like I certainly can feel it. And I'll often say, like, when I'm giving talks or working with folks, like, yeah, I've had 33 different thoughts about AI just in the last hour. And they are just all along many different continuums. So like helping to, I don't know, de-escalate the tension and the
Yeah.
stress around it.
So there's an element here of being open about our feelings. Today,
Yes.
someone was interviewing me about openness and AI. And in the middle of the interview, I'm like, look, I'm in a bad mood about AI this moment. So I don't have anything nice to say about it. And I grew into like one nice thing to say about it, which is about accessibility. But it's just sometimes like I'm having a triggered day, and how we feel. And a lot of times I start, instead of asking people how are they feeling today, I ask them, how are you feeling about AI today? And throughout my institutional workshops, this has been fluctuating all the time.
We have a question back there. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. We got a comment coming in.
Yeah, so it seems to me one of the challenges I see is getting faculty on board with understanding how students can effectively use AI, not for generation necessarily, not for writing their papers, but providing them with the proper tools to do research, to edit, those kinds of things, that AI sandwich, as some people call it. But I think what got me on board with using AI was really one of my colleagues talking about how she uses it to make her life easier. So she has always had, when students have a letter of recommendation request, she has a form that they fill out for certain types of information so she can easily write the letter. Now she feeds that form into AI. And so that form creates the letter and then she tweaks it. Right. I recently used it to help me finalize some rubrics on basic things, right? Because they're out there. And so ChatGPT in, I don't know, 4 or 5 prompts was able to easily make rubrics that probably would have taken me 45 minutes to an hour each. So I think those kinds of things, helping faculty understand how it can be useful to them in their day-to-day lives and not be kind of impinging on their academic freedom and things like that might be useful.
I'll add to that within the conversation. I think the extension of that for me is often in talking and working with faculty is like, find whether you use it or not, find like what's one use that you would be like, oh yeah, that's helpful. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's that for me that allows them to better extend empathy and understanding to why and how students are using it. Because for me, like that student that came in with like, oh, this has made sense, like using this to organize my notes has made sense, like that, what happened there was that student now wrote her paper earlier. And this is a student who's 35. She knows herself. She is not like long history of just like waiting, organizing the notes, putting it off till like when the paper is due and then doing the mad scramble. And this was something that was different for her. So like, I think that just trying to find doesn't mean if you use it or not personally, but understanding that way that people might find it is powerful or it is transformative or it does make something that was unusefully hard. In this case, note writing. We have about 3 minutes left. I just want to time check us. So,
Oh, do we want to take questions then? Does anybody have questions? We had a
yeah.
Mentimeter, but you can just unmute or walk up to the stage, of course. This is just for shy people. We want to be inclusive.
Question. We figured it all out.
When you talk to them too much, then they don't have any questions because they've been talking to us the whole time. They've been answering the question. Where was it that someone recently was talking about AI where we'd stop asking the questions, but we start questioning the answers? Oh, they weren't talking about AI. It was the BBC, I think, advertising themselves. I thought that would be a good thing about talk about AI because you have to question the answers of the AI and check the validity and verify, the information and all that. So we all have to become the BBC, basically. People in America know what the BBC is, right? Don't want to assume things. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
For many of us, BBC still feels better than most of the news options we have in the US, which isn't saying much, but
I mean, yeah, but you have to ask the British people how they feel. We have someone. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Anesia Dillard? I think I know how to say Dillard.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here in Lansing, Michigan. I have a colleague that is sitting here watching the session, and I just raised my hand so she could provide some a comment.
Yeah, so my comment, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My comment is that there's a voice that's absent from this room in this conference, and that is the voice of the angry, upset faculty member who's just like very anti-AI and thinks that the whole education system is ruined because of it. And that voice is a very angry, powerful voice. And I'm disappointed that that person isn't in this room because we need opportunities to figure out how to deal with that intense anger.
Yeah. And I think it's an important voice. And we should really look at how can we speak to each other with those emotions rather than just silencing that voice or setting it aside.
Yeah.
And this is the AI shaming thing that I kind of feel happens on both sides. Like some people feel shamed for liking AI and some people feel shamed for hating AI, and that shouldn't be the case. But maybe
Yeah.
private safe spaces. I know we're out of time, but I
We
think
are.
yeah.
We're getting the stop sign. I mean, I'll just the piece I'll add there is like I think that is true of AI, but I think that that's been an important voice of ire. That's AI is the next step in all the other things, and I would just I think that's important for us to think about. Is it is not just AI itself, but it's all the things that came before that compound interest. Thank you all so much, and really appreciate this session. Thank you, Anna and Maha. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you.